Each and every year, we have rookies who are contributing to championship fantasy rosters. I mean, if you remember back to last year, we had CJ Stroud, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Zay Flowers. The list goes on. Each and every year, you can trust rookies. And in today's video, I'm bringing you 5 rookies that you should not overlook for the 2024 season. Do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe. I got a like goal today of 100 likes. With your goal, I'm confident we can get there. All right, numero uno, a guy that you need on your teams in 2024. Don't be afraid to draft this guy. That is Trey Benson, the rookie running back with the Arizona Cardinals. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, James Conner. Look, James Conner is a great player. I like him, but he is a lock to miss a stretch of games due to injury each and every year. According to Injury Shark, he has never played a full season, missing 24 total games over the last 7 years. And their injury predictor gives Conner an 88.4% chance of injury this year, and they are projecting 2.8 missed games. Those numbers are 5th and 12th highest amongst running backs in their database. We know that James Conner is good to miss a stretch of games in fantasy football. And don't forget, the Cardinals made significant investment in Trey Benson this year. The second pick in round 3, right after Malachi Corley, and running backs who are selected in round 3 typically are given opportunities to produce at some point in their rookie season. We know they have a hit rate in the last 10 years of 54.5%, a hit being a top 24 points per game season. And oftentimes, round 3 running backs step in and produce straight away. I mean, recently, right? Devon Achane, Tajay Spears, Brian Robinson, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, all these guys drafted in round 3 and made an instant impact for their team in fantasy. All right, Devon Achane. Well, Raheem Mostert led the league in rushing touchdowns. Doesn't matter. Achane still found a way to demand work. Tajay Spears developed a role in the air, kept Derrick Henry off the field on passing downs. Brian Robinson, in his rookie season, beat out Antonio Gibson, who that doesn't sound like a lot now, but remember, the year before Brian Robinson was drafted, Antonio Gibson was a top 10 running back in fantasy football. Alvin Kamara joined a backfield with prime Mark Ingram and still carved out a role. You don't need to be scared about Trey Benson. And by the way, the dude is really freaking good. Size, speed, burst, short area quickness, strength through contact, pass catching ability. He is a do-it-all back. If we're talking about his speed, last year, no player in college football hit 21 miles per hour or greater more times in a game than Trey Benson. You want to talk about strength through contact? The year Bijan Robinson was drafted, Bijan forced a missed tackle on around 40% of his attempts. That year, Trey Benson was around 50% of his attempts. And by the way, he takes care of the ball, 0 career fumbles in his entire career. James Conner has never shared a backfield with a running back that has Trey Benson's type of talent. Le'Veon Bell doesn't count because Le'Veon Bell held out that year. So I just think if Trey gets a shot to win that job, considering there's no contract for Conner in 2025 and they're going to build around Trey Benson, I think he takes it and he could be a league winner in the second half of the season. All right, the second rookie that you need to draft, truly, you need to draft this guy. There's no reason not to. Ja'Lynn Polk of the New England Patriots. And no one's asking this question. I want to understand why no one's asking this question. Like, what if Drake May is actually good? None of us are actually asking this question. This time last year, no one thought CJ Stroud was going to do what he did as a rookie. People wrote him off. It was he's an Ohio State quarterback. Look, he's throwing interceptions in preseason. But the people who took a flyer on the Texans team last year, the wide receiver room, they were well rewarded. The Texans wide receivers ADP last year, Nico Collins was a wide receiver 58. Tank Dell was a wide receiver 78. The best values in fantasy football each year, those are typically defined by drastic changes, and there's not much more change from any NFL team than the New England Patriots, right? Bill Belichick is out as GM and head coach, and offensive coordinator has changed from Bill O'Brien to Alex Van Pelt. They actually got some good quarterbacks in the room, and this team, like Trey Benson, made a big commitment to Ja'Lynn Polk. They drafted Ja'Lynn Polk over Adonai Mitchell, who people thought should have been a first-round pick, Roman Wilson, Jalen McMillan, Jermaine Burton, and Troy Franklin. Round 2, pick 37 in a stacked wide receiver class. And just like we said with Trey Benson, rounds 2 to 3 wide receivers, they get a chance to make instant impacts a lot. right? Recently, Jayden Reed made an impact as a rookie. Rashee Rice, Christian Watson, George Pickens, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, Tank Dell, and Josh Downs. All these guys drafted in rounds 2 or 3 made impacts as a rookie. And guess what? Jalen Polk is going to cost you nothing. Right now, if you average out ESPN, Underdog, and Sleeper, he's averaged as the wide receiver 69. On average, rounds 12 to 14, you are risking literally nothing. You could be drafting the number 1 wide receiver for a team that has question marks on quarterback, but there's some clear upside. So why not draft Jalen Polk? It's going to cost you nothing, and there's a lot of upside untapped there. I'm going to get into my next player, but I got to let you know that you don't need to wait to play fantasy football in September. Play fantasy football right now. That's what we're doing over here. Go to underdogfantasy.com. They got real tournaments, real money, real leagues on the line. If you haven't signed up yet, use the promo code LAND. When you do, we'll match your deposit 50% up to $250, meaning you'll get $125 free to bet with just by using the promo code LAND. And this channel will benefit from it as well, of course. And maybe you don't like best ball, but how about player props? They got pick'ems on the website. You can choose higher or lower on a bunch of different sports. They even have season-long projections that you can bet on right now. For example, Amari Cooper and Drizzy Drake London. Super fun. Check it out with the pinned comment and sign up if you haven't yet. But, all right, let's say you were to ask the question, Zach, who is this year's Jayden Reed? If I was to take a stab at it, I would say this year's Jayden Reed is going to be Jermaine Burton of the Cincinnati Bengals. This is the cheapest in on a high-powered passing offense in Cincinnati, right? There's every indication that the Bengals are going to throw the ball a lot in 2024. Why do I say that? Number 1, Joe Mixon was traded to Houston, their franchise running back. Number 2, in the last 2 years, the Bengals have already been top 10 in passing attempts per game. On average in the past 2 seasons, 37 passing attempts per game. And I believe Burton is going to have an important role from day one. He will take over the Tyler Boyd slot role, even though he can move inside and outside of alignments. But if you look at Tyler Boyd in the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins type of era with Joe Burrow as well, he's averaging 92 targets a year in those 3 years and 10.1 PPR points per game per season if you take 23 to 21 and average it out. The difference is this team is actively thinking about the post-Higgins era, right? That leads me to believe that Burton, they could be looking at him more and more, trying to get him more involved as the season goes on, trying to test his limits. What is the capacity of Jermaine Burton if we are to move on from T. Higgins at some point? Whereas with Boyd, his role was very defined and locked in. He didn't have much of a ceiling, right? I think now with a rookie that they really love in Jermaine Burton, what could he do for this team? And as for T. Higgins, if he can't stay healthy, that's great for Burton. If he does stay healthy, do they trade him away in season? That would clear opportunity for Burton. So the way Jayden Reed and Rashee Rice, their role continually grew last year as rookies, I could see the same thing for Jermaine Burton in 2024. I would not be surprised if he is like a must-start player week 10 onwards, if that makes sense. All right, the 4th player that you need to draft, and I've talked about this guy a little bit already on the channel, but you need this dude, trust me. Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is one of the best picks in fantasy drafts this year, hands down. Now, we talked about this earlier on the channel, but let me ask you guys, what do you think the best fantasy quarterbacks have in common? Well, why don't we look at the last 5 years, and let's look at what the number 1 quarterback in fantasy, what they had in common for those finishes, all right? 4 of the last 5 years, the quarterback one in fantasy had at least 700 rushing yards or 8 rushing touchdowns. Here are the quarterbacks that I personally believe can put up either 700 rushing yards or 8 rushing touchdowns in the league today. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, because we've seen it before. And yes, Jayden Daniels is very popular. He's a possible option in this category as well. Don't forget, this dude's a nightmare. This dude is a nightmare. Defensive coordinators are going to be losing sleep prepping for Jayden Daniels this year. Daniels at LSU, back-to-back years with 1,000 rushing yards or more and 10 rushing touchdowns or more. In the entire SEC last year, even if you include running backs, Jayden Daniels was 3rd in total rushing yards in one of the best conferences in college football. And in the 153 years of college football, he was the first and only player ever to have 350 passing yards and 200 rushing yards in a single game. This dude is a nightmare. He is a game changer. And what he does on the ground, he has a top 5 ceiling as a fantasy quarterback as a rookie. So do not be afraid to bet on Jayden Daniels and skip out on some of those top name quarterbacks earlier in the draft. And the last rookie that you need, he's being overlooked in my opinion, that is Brian Thomas Jr. And with rookie wide receivers, typically it's better to be early than late, right? Here are some round 1 wide receivers who have beaten their rookie ADP over the past 5 years. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Garrett Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, Brandon Ayuk, and Hollywood Brown. They have all beaten their ADP as a rookie. Now, unfortunately, the fantasy community has gotten a lot smarter at drafting rookie wide receivers, and it's making it more difficult to obtain round 1 rookie wide receivers in drafts. Hear me out. This is what I'm saying. If you average out the ADP of ESPN Sleeper and Underdog, this is where you have to take some of the rookie wide receivers this year. If you want to take Marvin Harrison Jr., he costs the 205 in a 12-man league, early second round. If you want to take Malik Neighbors, he's going to cost the 406. If you want to take Rome Odunze, the 709. Worthy's the 801. Lamar McConkey's the 807. Keon Coleman's the 902. But look at that. Brian Thomas Jr., the 904. Even though Brian was the 4th wide receiver selected in this year's draft, and he went to a situation where he's desperately needed with a good quarterback, in my opinion, he's the 4th wide receiver selected in the draft, but he's going as the 7th rookie wide receiver in fantasy football this year. I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I love Malik Neighbors, but both of those guys are going higher than any rookie wide receiver ever has in the history of fantasy football. So typically you want to bet on guys that are really low down the board that have this untapped upside. With Marvin, you're almost drafting him at his ceiling. I know he could be a top 5 guy, but it's just difficult to stomach. Whereas with Brian, that is like your 9th player that you're drafting in fantasy football. I feel more confident that Brian Thomas can beat his ADP of wide receiver 46 than I do that Marvin Harrison Jr. can beat his ADP of wide receiver 9. And by the way, this team just lost Calvin Ridley, the guy that they gave 136 targets to in 2023. There's a gaping hole in this team. Brian Robinson fits it. He's got a huge upside. He could score a bunch of touchdowns with his play style. You got to draft this guy. It's a no-brainer. So those are some rookies that I think you need in fantasy this year. I think they're all going to help you win leagues. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. I'll love it. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.